In this, my 9th video, I have moved on to talk about a subject which is bandied around worldwide every day and yet means different things to different people. I am talking about human rights allied to civil liberties. The abuse of those could be subjectively measured against several yardsticks, which tends to confuse and indeed excuse the perpetration thereof. Some countries have a reputation for brazen abuse. Others seem to be squeaky clean. Well, already you will see what is coming up next. However, let us be quite clear on one thing. Human rights must yield fairness, equality, lack of oppression and exploitation, freedoms, peacefulness without interference, and be universally applied across a society. It should be a cohesive force of responsibility and respect to its citizens, which should reflect a grading of civilization itself. The UK trumpets its indulgence for human rights across the world and even lectures other countries on non-observance. It has become a byword for a paragon of virtue, especially orchestrated by its fawning treatment for undesirables to our shores. Attention to that group not only induces sometimes wonder across the world, but it also yields a substantial income for the judicial system. Meanwhile, UK citizens face a different picture and result as usual. The power and control of monitoring and deliberating upon our human rights is vested in the judiciary, the very collective body which abuses such rights in the first place, and no less is the arbiter for them when perpetrated by other public bodies. It is nearly always the individual UK citizen which suffers, not just from oppression, but loses out in so many other ways. No wonder that the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg has more applications of complaint to it from the UK than all the other EU countries put together. But the courtiers there, as it were, are significantly UK lawyers, so even that appeal avenue can easily be significantly blocked. Back in the UK, the judiciary have also been granted an opt-out for accountability and responsibility over our rights. Not many people realise that the European Convention on Human Rights is a covenant of the EU states, i.e. the Queen and Parliament, not the judiciary and the courts. And yet the judiciary have been granted the power to be arbiters and unlikely enforcers of our rights. In other words, they have the authority but not the responsibility. No wonder they take no notice of our application for observance. Even then, be it the Queen who takes the theoretical responsibility for us, guess who are the representatives answering for protecting her? As I found out just lately when I put in a counterclaim in the criminal courts against Regina, the Queen, the judge looked at it cursorily like a smelly turd and refused acceptance. Oh yes, you name it, and I seem to have experienced it. Human Rights Act 1998. This strengthens the power of judges to interpret the law, effectively to make law. The President of the Supreme Court has recently described Parliament as having written judges something of a blank cheque. They have been able to interpret parliamentary statute in creative ways. In his classic book, The Rule of Law, the late Lord Bingham pointed out the illegality where a state which savagely represses or persecutes sections of its people cannot, in my view, be regarded as observing the rule of law. Human rights should provide us with a mechanism to oppose oppression and abuse of power. And the last people in the country should be the very people that firstly deny that to us and secondly are the main offenders thereto. Please note, one of the most important pieces of rights legislation Article 6 in the Convention says, in the determination of his civil rights and obligations, or of any criminal charge against him, everyone is entitled to a fair and public hearing within a reasonable time by an independent and impartial tribunal established by law. Our civil rights and obligations to us, of course, must include treatment to us which is honest, honourable and just, not based on bias, crookedness, often criminality and injustice. The judiciary have been given too much power, accountable only to themselves. A public duty, service and responsibility have been turned against us and set an example of self-interest, selfishness and irresponsibility. It has shuddered through our society like a disease. Honour, integrity, honesty, duty and much more have been defiled and derided as our nation suffers. As I form this video right now, I have written publicly to the Lord Chief Justice, seeking his attention to the abuse of my human rights. I have done this because we went to the same school, Rugby School, renowned for its fairness as the basis for the Olympic Games. These rights are surely for our social standards, equality and trust, and the last bastion against oppression and suppression. And yet they are gifted to the destroyers. We must be mad. In my next video, I will try to sum up what I've attempted to get across to you in terms of required change. Without further deliberation, I hope that I've shown you that injustice in the UK is being cheated wholesale. My biographers show hundreds of thousands of words of evidence, backed up by tens of millions off stage, as it were. Luckily, to survive this ordeal so far, I have always been one to move forward and be positive. This no less is relevant, because the viewer and reader can see the message of the now reality. But do we retreat and let them get on with it? The answer must surely be an emphatic no. Next, I will give a list of my positive suggestions for rectification. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.